Hey everyone, welcome back. I believe this is our 6th lab video, and we're going to be covering the 3rd lab assignment. So as usual, if you come under the lab assignments module, I have the details posted. You can also navigate here from assignments. But this is going to be due on October 4th. So this coming Saturday by, the usual 11:59. So for this one, we're following along in the SPSS book with Unit 4, Lessons 16 and 17. For this assignment, I have provided a data set, so it's linked here, so you just have to download it and open it, and all of the exercises that you're doing for this assignment will be done in that data set. This also means that you are submitting your output file this time, so only one file upload is necessary for this 3rd lab assignment. There's no need to upload the data file because I'm providing that for you. And there's no graded components in the actual data file this time. It's all going to be visible and able for me to verify in the output file. Okay, so once you open up that data set, what are you doing? This time we are creating charts. So it's pretty straightforward. So this might not be a very long video, but that's okay. Hopefully that means it doesn't take you very long, but I'm just going to walk through everything that you need to know now. So with this data set that I provided, so this is it open, we have some different variables this time, but similar to what we've looked at before. So we have an ID variable, gender variable coded as 0 and 1, age as a continuous variable, test score also as a continuous variable for math, test score for reading, and finally a categorical variable for club. So we have 3 different possibilities here, so 3 different categories that are represented in this data set. And from anything we're doing today, I'm not asking you to interpret anything that you create with these charts. This is literally just working with some data to create a chart, so to make sure you know how to work with charts, different types of charts, and then modify those charts. So I'm not asking for any interpretation here. This data set is, far too small to make it, and I chose it randomly from an existing data set, so there's no telling what patterns or lack of patterns there are in the data set. I'm just letting you know this is just like a small random subset of another data set. Okay, so here you can also see I have our variable labels that we learned about in the first lab assignment, so the importance of those, as well as value labels for our categorical variables, where the number itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. We need to assign it a number for the sake of analysis, or anything that we're doing in SPSS, but the actual number doesn't mean anything per se, so we need to define what those groups then are that we arbitrarily assigned, so that it's labeled in our output, whether it's a chart or an analysis table, again, so that male or female label comes through, so we can easily, so it's not showing up as 0 or 1 in the output, which makes it a lot more readable, as well as for charts as well. Okay, and then we also have some labels for our clubs. So we'll see 1 is for the debate club, 2 is for band, 3 is for drama. Again, very arbitrary labels, just for the sake so we know which group is which. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do, coming back to the assignment, is you want to create a line chart. And some instructions that I put in the assignment is that in your output file, I should see, because this assignment has to do with creating charts and then modifying those charts, I want to be able to compare your original chart with the modified chart. So I want all of the original charts to appear, so you're just going to follow the instructions like normal, but then I want you to essentially create each chart twice, which is really easy. I'll walk you through it, but I want to be able to see the original chart as well as the one with modifications made. That's the way I'm going to be able to grade it. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to tell what you changed, what you didn't change, apart from comparing it to the original default settings, but for different versions of SPSS or just even different desktops or operating systems, those default settings may differ. So I want to see the original chart compared against the modified chart. So we're going to create each chart twice. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the assignment. So what I'm going to do is show you how to create each chart twice right in the moment, and then when we get down to here to modifying the charts, we'll go back to those like duplicated charts and modify one of them. Okay, so first you're going to create a line chart with your mean math score and age. So nothing special you have to do for these variables. You know, we've practiced transforming variables, recoding variables, that type of thing. But for right now, it's very straightforward. We have both age and math score. So how do you build a line chart? You're going to go up here to graphs and then chart builder. Hit OK. So the option that pops up here is, you know, a good kind of reminder before you get into your charts that you really need to have your labels, value labels, variable labels, or the type of measurement, so a scale, nominal, ordinal, what each variable, what type of variable it is, what type of measurement it is, already defined before you make your chart. So if I didn't have that already done, I would go over here to define variable properties, or you can come back over to variable view and just make sure you have all those things. So I already have the type of measure identified for all of these. I have the value labels for the categorical variables, as we talked about, and I have variable labels. So I have everything I would need. Another thing here would be, you know, if any of these variables weren't just numeric variables, you would want to be sure that was defined. But we only have numeric variables, so nothing to worry about here. So that's all that pop-up box is asking. It's just making sure the measurement level as well as any important value labels are already added. That way when you add them to your chart, it makes sense when it comes up in your output. Everything is labeled as it should be. So I'm going to hit OK, and it pulls up the chart builder. So first things first, you're going to come down and choose what type of chart. So we're sticking super simple for this assignment, but just so you can see, there are different types of bar charts, line charts, all different types of charts that you can go through. For the purpose of this, we want a line chart, so we just want the simple one. So you can either double click the chart you want or just drag it up to the like dialog box. And then similar, you're going to drag the variables of interest to the different axes. So for this, we want age as our x-axis, so just drag it down here. And then we want our math score as our y-axis. And you can also add like filter variables. So there's a lot of different settings here, but for the purpose of this assignment, this is what we want right now. There are other settings over here as well if you want to edit it from the get-go. But for now, we just want to see, you know, a very like simple line chart of age by math score. So no other edits are necessary. So you're going to hit OK. And as I mentioned, we should create each chart twice because I want to see the original that you created without modifying any like special settings. So I'm going to come back to the data file and I'm just going to come back to graph. Same pop-up comes up and it still has this from my last, from the graph we just made. So I'm just going to hit OK again. I don't have to change anything. And now I have the same graph reproduced. Okay, so that's all we want to do for now. What is next? So next we want to create a bar chart showing the number of students by club. So essentially how many students are in each club in our small data set. So coming back here, clicking into the data file to get the graphs, chart builder. Okay, so I'm done with this chart for the time being. When I want to edit it, I'm going to edit the one that's already in my output, the duplicate we made. So I'm going to reset this. I don't need this anymore. And now I'm coming for the bar chart. So go under bar and just the first one that pops up, the most simple. And what we're going to do here is a little bit different because we only need to move one variable over. So we're not actually looking at anything related to any of these other variables on the y-axis. So we're not looking at, you know, clubs by age or gender or anything like that. We just want to see the number of students in each club represented in this bar graph. So all we have to do is drag the club variable down here to the x-axis, and automatically, just with putting that one variable in, the y-axis automatically populated with, you know, what would you be trying to measure with this variable on the y-axis, and most likely it would be, you know, frequency or count. So how many? Great, so that's exactly what we needed for this one. So we're just going to hit OK, and then similar to before, I'm just going to go back to graphs. Okay, and you can also click this since we already know what this warning is for, so it doesn't come back up. And then I'm just going to hit OK again. So now I have this bar chart for, oops, sorry, I went too far. This bar chart for the number of students in each club represented twice, so I can show the original versus the one we're going to modify later. Okay, what's next? Now we want to create a scatter plot of just the test scores against each other. So we want the math scores represented on the x-axis. So this is very important. I will be grading if you put the correct variable on the correct axis, just because I'm specifying it here. You could totally do the inverse, like in terms of feasibility. Like there's no reason why math has to be on the x-axis. I just want, for the sake of this assignment, for you to put it on the x-axis. So since I'm defining it in the assignment here and in the tutorial, you just want to be sure to follow that. But practicality-wise, there's no reason why they couldn't be flipped with reading on the x-axis and math on the y-axis. But for the purpose of this assignment, what we're doing is going to graphs, chart builder again, and I've already, you know, duplicated our bar graph, so I'm going to reset. And this time I'm looking for a scatter. So under the choose from and the type, I'm going to the scatter category, and again, just the first one, drag it up. I'm dragging the math score to the x-axis, reading score to the y-axis, and then hit OK. So we have that here now. And again, just duplicating that, going into the chart builder. This is already in here, so I just need to hit OK. So now I have two of those. What's next? So the next one is a pie chart. So similar to the bar chart, we don't need another variable represent. So we're just looking at one variable when we're making the pie chart. So we just want a pie chart demonstrating or visualizing the gender distribution in this specific data set. So we're not comparing it to anything else like school club or scores or anything like that. We just want a very simple representation for our gender distribution for this data. So go to graphs, chart builder. This all should feel very repetitive by now. We can reset this. So this time I'm choosing a pie chart. So coming under here, there's only one option, so that's super easy. So what we want to do is move our variable of interest in the slice by box. So categorical gender. So you should see we have two categories here, so we don't need to do anything else. Again, this auto-populated, so we know that this is representing our count or the frequency of one of these categories in the data set. So we don't have to put any other variables, and we see it's represented over here. Okay, what's next? So before we modify any of our charts, oh, and I almost forgot. I want to make sure. Oh, for that one, I'm pretty sure you're not modifying it later. Yeah, so the charts that you need to modify are the first three. So you actually do not need to create a duplicate of the pie chart for that one. If you do, it won't count against you. I'm just letting you know the only ones you're editing for the purpose of points in the assignment are the line chart, bar chart, and scatter plot. If you want to edit the pie chart, that's totally fine, but just not a graded part of the assignment. Okay, but before we move on to that, just make sure we complete this last step. So this is the purpose of this step is in one of the previous assignments, I believe it's been both assignments where it's come up, but the first one for sure, where there was certain output that I was getting that was maybe not populating for you guys. So like the specific syntax or commands that are being run in your output, for example, would be like this section of the output. This is because there is a setting that we're going to enable just to show you like why that sometimes looks different or why sometimes the same output doesn't appear when you guys are following along with me. And it's because the setting is maybe not enabled by default, which is totally fine, but I'm just showing you how you can enable it so that your commands are printed in the output as well. So you can see what syntax essentially was run to result in this output. So it's usually printed off for like each command that you do. So this whole chunk is for this graph. So basically any line of text up here is usually the commands, unless you're like creating labels in the output, which is also really common. You can add like additional text throughout here to help label your output, which sometimes you can just label, you know, what this is called, like what it's titled, this section of the output, to help label it and sort it. So when you're going through it looking for a specific chart, it's all labeled very cleanly. But anyway, so this next part of the assignment is just showing how we get this setting enabled so that this shows up on your output, because there were a lot of questions for that. And I didn't realize before that I have this setting enabled, and maybe when you log on to the virtual lab or your own computer or whatever it may be, maybe the setting isn't automatically enabled. And again, it's not necessary. I'm just showing you how to do it, and then you're showing me that you learned how to do it through this next step of the assignment. So the instruction is we're going to the edit menu, options, viewer, and checking this setting, display commands in the log. So to do this, you need to have the data file open. So the same options that we're about to see will not necessarily appear if you have the output open. Again, it depends on your version of SPSS, so it really depends, but so I'm telling you, you need to have the data file open, so make sure it's the last file you clicked on. So we're going to edit, options at the bottom, and you know there's different, I think when you initially open it, so I'll do that again to show you, it'll open on general, so just hit OK. I'm just going to go back there. So you see, I believe this is how it opens. So I had already navigated to this window that we need, but it'll open on general. You don't need anything here. You're going to navigate over to the viewer tab. And this is the setting I'm referring to. So if you open this and it's unchecked, I want you to check it. If it's already checked, then leave it alone. And you'll already have this in your output. Like you'll see those commands or the syntax, as we call it, in your output. So if this is already present in your output because it was already enabled, don't worry about this step. At least you know where to find it now. But if it was unchecked, I want you to check it and then hit OK. At this point, if we go to your output, you shouldn't see the commands as text like this in your output. And what I want to do is show that you turn this on or enabled the setting to display this. So what I want you to do, we come back to graphs over here. And so in this case, I guess you can just make a duplicate of this last pie chart, even though we're not modifying the pie chart, just to show me that you turned the setting on. So you can also see where the syntax is coming from. SPSS is, you know, what we call point and click. So you just point to the specific, you know, chart you select these things just by clicking. You don't have to write any code, but SPSS also has the ability to write your syntax or code to execute the same commands, if that makes sense. And sometimes when you're running, say, a lot of maybe you need to produce a lot of charts and you don't want to go through this option, and this goes for any analysis, not just chart building, but maybe you're wanting to run a very similar syntax and it's easy to just paste the syntax. And when I say that, I mean I'm pasting, and it's going to open the syntax file. And maybe you want to run this, so run it just as it is. So I have it a highlight and I would just click run. Or maybe like the reason you want the syntax is because you want to both run the original one that you have here, and maybe you want to run a second one. So say you want to recreate it, but maybe you want to change like one thing, like the name or the specific variable. So you can paste it and, make those edits directly in the syntax and then run that as it is. We're not doing that for this assignment. I'm just letting you know why. Basically, the versatility of SPSS is you can do both. You can do the point and click where you navigate to these different menus and it takes you exactly where you need to go, and it writes it for you and runs it in the background, like without you having to write it out or know what it means. But for this case, I just want you to see that like where that takes you. I brought it up when we talked about the types of files that you work in SPSS, and you have the data files, the output files, which is all things we've worked with so far, but you also have the syntax file. And again, this is also really helpful when you're redoing the same analyses on like new data. So say you're running the same, like your new data set has like the same variables you're interested in, you need to run the same regression model or ANOVA, whatever it may be, or build the same charts. You can just save the syntax, and you can also label it really well in here. So see how there's like an asterisk in front of chart builder, so it's grayed out. This is a way that you can like label your data set without it like thinking it's code that needs to be read. So you use that asterisk to make it like unreadable, but it's a label. But essentially, this can come in real handy when you're trying to clean, analyze, visualize data sets that you've already conducted, like the same type of analysis that you want to do. Say you created like, you have two versions of the study, one that's run in the US and another internationally. Those are still separate data sets, but maybe you're doing the exact same analyses and the data is structured like very similarly, if not identical, maybe excluding like a translation or something like that. But your variables and the way it's structured and the analyses that you're doing are then the same, rather than going through and completing those analyses like from start to finish using point and click, like selecting the different menus and analyses you want. Maybe you just want to copy and paste the syntax and, edit a few names of things that you need to that maybe differ. And then very quickly you can just select it and hit run, and then it runs it for you, if that makes sense. So for people, so that was just an example of why you might want to use the syntax and label it really cleanly. Nothing we're doing for this assignment, just wanted to give that insight. But so we have pasted the syntax from that last chart and we ran it. So as you guys saw, I just highlighted and hit run. Already had that setting enabled, so it doesn't look any different. We're seeing the same syntax commands that I was able to see earlier. But for those that didn't have this setting enabled, this should then be the first time you see these like command text lines. So you just want to be sure that you turn this on and run one of the charts again, so you can then see a line of the command line, so I can verify that you enabled the setting. Either it was already enabled and you checked, or it was disabled and now this is the first time it's appearing. If it was already enabled, you'll already have that in your output. It will have already been turned on. So moving on, we just want to modify the duplicated versions of the original chart we made. So for now, I'm going to save this output. So file, I just make sure it's in the correct location. 16 output. So I've saved this, so we have our duplicated versions of the charts, but now they're the same. So now what do we need to do to modify them for the sake of this assignment? So you'll leave your original, so just come to the second version, so it should be right underneath. So for the assignment, we just need to modify our title and axis labels, and then change the y-axis to whole numbers so that there are no decimal points. So to open up a given chart that we want to edit or modify after we've already created it, you just come to the chart in your output and double click, and it'll open. Oh, I think I clicked 3 times, so I clicked out of it, but we open the chart editor, and for the sake of this, it automatically generated, because our data, our variables were, already labeled, it, generated these for us, but just change them, modify them in some way. So as long as they're different from the, what the data set was when I, as I created it. So when you downloaded it, these variables were already labeled and everything. So as long as it's different from what I automatically had, sorry, sometimes the double click does not register on my computer. So I'm just simplifying the axes labels here. Average math scores, so that they're a bit cleaner, maybe ready to paste into a publication document or a paper, whatever it may be, just so they're not labeled as just what's kind of automatically given. So you don't have to match exactly what I'm doing. I'm just giving an example of what I might be interested in renaming it as if I wanted it to be, prettier, help the readability, so on and so forth. So I have updated the title and the axes labels. So as long as you do that in some form or fashion, you'll get points for that. The next point on the assignment was changing the y-axis to whole numbers so that there are no decimal points. So right now, the math scores are, the labels on the y-axis, kind of not necessary to have those decimal places. It's just adding, something extra that's just, one, is not necessarily the most visually pleasing, but it's also just not necessary for the sake of this. So to do that, I'm in the chart editor still. I'm going to hit on this y-axis option, and then the properties for the y-axis are going to come up. So what I'm interested in, you can go through these different menus to see, the different things you can change, but I'm going to the number format. So the numbers on the y-axis, I want them to have 0 decimal places. So I apply and got rid of those. For the sake of consistency, I want to edit the same thing. This is not a part of the assignment, but I'm just showing you I'm doing it to both because this is more in line with what I want it to look like. So unless the decimal places were like really important to the specific variable, or like the range was very narrow, so the decimal places are something, interpretable, I don't really want those represented on the axis labels, if that makes sense. So that's all you need to edit for that. So we've already applied all of our settings, so I can close this, and we will see that we have our original and the one we modified with our changes applied. Okay, so that's all you have to do for the line chart. So moving to the bar chart, what we want to do is change the color of the bars. So now we want to edit our bar chart. So what we need to do is just open this up. I double clicked on the bar chart, and then I'm going to click on the specific bars, and it's pulling up the properties. I'm interested in, changing the color of this first bar. Basically, we want each group or club to be represented by a different color, so visually it's very easily to tell that they are referring to different things. So maybe I'll pick red for this one. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to do that. So maybe this time. Okay, so now I clicked just on band, so maybe we keep that one as blue. And then maybe this one as green. So now we have all different colors represented. So you can keep one as blue, or you can even change the, shade of blue just to show that you changed it for all of them. So now we have our different clubs represented by different colors, so that visually it's very easily someone is able to just very quickly tell we're talking about different groups here. But now we want to add our data labels. Again, we can tell, debate is lying in between 10 and 12 on the y-axis, so we can, tell that there are 11 people who are in the debate club in this data set. But we want someone just coming across this graph to be able to very quickly know that information. So when I have the bar selected, so see, I click out and then I just click on one of the bars and all three are selected. Going to Elements, Show Data Labels. And what the information we want displayed is the count, so that's correctly there. So everything else is great. I personally like the data labels at the bottom, so I just switched it from automatic to custom down here. Also, I don't necessarily like the white background. I want it to match like the background of the color of the bar. To me, the box number is a bit weird, but I can change that. So I'm applying that and then selecting these. Let's see if they have, okay, fill in border. So I just tabbed over here. So we went from the data value labels, setting where we would like them and making sure it's giving us the correct information, which it is, the count. But I just tabbed over here to fill in border to a different menu because I would rather them not have a different colored border and not have a different colored fill. And then we can also go to the text style. We can make, I want the text size, significantly bigger. So I just changed that. And you can also make it a different color. With these dark color, you can decide with these dark colors is, black the best text color, or maybe white. It just depends on the darkness or lightness of the respective colors that you pick. I also typically bold mine. Well, okay, so I applied those correctly this time. Okay, so I was able to apply those settings, and now we can see we have both our data labels added, but they're also, bigger text, bolded. They don't have those awkward boxes around them. So this is more in line with what I would like to see on one of my graphs for whether it's a academic research paper or a publication. This is something I would go for. So now that we've done that, we can close out of this. We've applied those settings. We can see they appear really nicely right here. So when I'm going to hit save. So now I have my updated line and bar charts. Oh, I accidentally updated the first one instead of the second one. So that's totally fine as long as I can see, both versions. It doesn't matter if it's the first or the second one. Okay, so now coming down to the last step. So for this one, I want you to add a regression fit line, which I'm going to show you how to do. We're going to change the marker style or size, which is just the dots represented in the scatter plot, so the data points. Change those the style or size, and then modify the legend or access labels for readability. So similar to the first one, just we don't have a legend for these variables, so you could add a legend if you wanted, make it more complicated by adding an additional variable maybe that needs a legend, but that's what we're doing for this one. So I'm going to keep it super simple. We're going to double click to change the markers or the dots, data points. All you have to do is when I double click the chart to open the chart editor, and then I double clicked one of the dots, and then I can come over here and I can change the size. So say you want to make them really big. Oh, I made them, much larger. You can also change the color. You can also change not only the center color, but the outline, the border, to make them stand out. So say I did something like that. You can see, as I click over here, that they're outlined in red, filled with blue. So just changing the color and the size for that part. For adding a regression line, so it's actually pretty simple. Out of these options up here, it can be very overwhelming, but if you come over here to this one, that looks like a fit line, and you can see when the title of the option comes up, it says add fit line, which is basically like a regression fit, an equation that models this data. If it was like a simplified trend line versus each data point represented. So this just shows both of that. So just clicking that, it adds it, but you can change the specific settings. We're just looking for a linear regression line, so keep it on linear, or change it if that was not automatically selected. And then you don't have to change anything else. So everything else, you can see what you can change visually, but you don't need to change anything once you add that line. So just this one right here, adding fit line. So we've added this equation. Again, you don't have to keep this visually on the graph if you don't want to, or you can move it around. But as long as I see the fit line added, that works. It'll also add this R squared. Basically, this statistic is just telling us the amount of variability accounted for by this model. So by this fit line or regression equation, it accounts for this amount of variability in the model, which is typically communicated as a percent. So this would be around 3% of the variability in our data is accounted for by this regression model, which is not a lot at all, which makes sense because, like I mentioned, we have a small subset of a larger data set. We don't really have enough data points to get a good grasp on the relationship that the data is trying to tell us. So it makes sense that with just 20 data points, we're getting very low R squared. So again, this would be around 3% of the variability, which just means 3% of what's happening in the data, the differences in the data, are explained by this regression equation, which again is pretty low, very low, just for some context there. So as long as you have that fit line added, you will get points for that part. I just want to make sure, oh yeah, and just modifying the axis labels. So again, just coming in here and saying average math score. Just to clean up the titles. Okay, so I updated those titles, and that's all you have to do. So there was one other thing I put in this assignment that's totally optional. It's just for if you feel like maybe you have a good grasp on making the charts. Something I want to ask for comprehension, again, totally optional. It's not coming out of the 20 points for this assignment, but I want you to explore. This will also help exercise, some of the previous things we've learned in SPSS, which is creating a categorical variable for age. So maybe age represented by some distinct age groups. And, I have given an example of some here, but, up to you. But creating a categorical variable for age. So we already have the age data in here, but instead, just for an additional exercise, consider creating another variable where you use the recode into a different variable to create an additional age group variable where you recode, 18, 19, 20 into one age group, so on and so forth. So you can practice recoding. And then I want you to, again, for this optional exercise, you don't have to, and I'm not going through the motions because I don't want to do it and talk too much about it. I would really like to talk about it maybe in a future lab assignment, just to unpack this a little bit more. But I would like, if you're trying to get a deeper understanding, I would like you to attempt it first. Again, no points coming out of this part. It's just an optional exercise. So once you create that the categorical variable for age, I want you to create a new line chart where you're still using the mean math score on the y-axis, but instead of using the continuous variable for age, or you could think of it as like the raw data for age, use the age group variable. And if you do this, I would like you to compare the two line charts. So the one you created with the original age variable and then one with the age group variable. And then just leave me a comment explaining how the charts are different, are they telling a different story or a similar story? And then which one you think is maybe better than the other, which one, and just explain why. So I don't want to give too much away or what I'm thinking there, but I would just like you to create that categorical variable for age. And then once you have those new age groups, then create a new line chart with the mean math score on the y-axis still, but then this age group variable, and then just compare the two line charts and, leave me a comment discussing how they are different or similar to you and which one you think is better or stronger for whatever your reasoning is. This is totally optional, just me trying to incorporate maybe some additional exercises for those who feel like they have a good grasp on things and maybe push it a little bit further. So yeah, if you get all the way through this and you're interested in that part, just leave a comment on your assignment submission, discussing the difference of the charts and which one you think would be recommended and why. So totally optional. Again, this assignment, you're going to be submitting just one file, so the output file. Make sure you save it after completing the last step that we just did, and then submit that output file and I'll grade it. It's due October 4th. So I'm posting this, at the start of the week, and I'm going to be grading the annotated bibliography as well as the second lab assignment. So over the next few days, you should, get a grade and any applicable comments to your annotated bibliography. And then same thing for the second lab assignment. For if you lost points, I'll tell you where or what specific step you lost points. And then if you ever leave a comment asking questions, I'll also respond to any questions. So again, it really just depends. If you're receiving full points for something, I'm not gonna leave a detailed comment, maybe breaking that down just because it was clear that you understood the assignment. But if you have any questions, you're always welcome to put them. Even if you receive full points, I'll respond. But anytime you're losing points, I just try to be clear about where the points were lost. But if you have any questions about that specifically, just let me know. I say this, I think, every time, but as a reminder, my office hours are on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m., held virtually. So yeah, as a reminder, my Zoom link is here. I highly encourage you to come if you're having trouble with these assignments. Also, you can reach out to me by email. I know several of you have emailed me about the last lab assignment. And I try to respond in a timely manner. If you email me over the weekend, I can't guarantee a response then. That is outside of, working hours for, you're going to encounter that with, professors, TAs, lots of different people. Just because you are completing the assignment then doesn't mean I'm working then. So that's just something to keep in mind. Although, if it's something urgent, I try my best to respond in a timely manner, but you really cannot count on a reply until that Monday. So something that helps me, honestly, when you reach out, because I want to be able to help you guys, that is never a question. I'm here to help you. I don't benefit at all from you guys struggling on these assignments or not understanding them. I want you all to understand them. But at the same time, if I don't know that you're struggling, then what can I do? But some of you, will reach out to me, which I really appreciate, and I try to help just over email. So maybe if my office hours, are the next day or so on and so forth, I try to, sometimes we can get it resolved over email, going back and forth. But something that might help, is one, give me some context for what you're struggling with, the specific step of the assignment, like really not understanding, like just something specific, like, oh, I'm struggling with the pie chart, or, sometimes your issues are going to be more general than that, and I understand, but just give me some context. Are you struggling with accessing SPSS, in the virtual lab? That has been a common, struggle, which I totally understand. Are you struggling with, saving and or sending the data files, output files, whatever, SPSS files to yourself because you're working in the virtual lab? As a reminder, when you're working in the virtual lab, you are not saving to your local drive on your computer. Your local drive and the virtual lab remote desktop are not communicating with one another. You're essentially launching an application in your computer, but then it is, you're remote accessing a different desktop. So when you save files in that remote desktop, it is not saving to your local drive, which I think some of you have been, reminded of and have had to encounter and figure out. So, if you're having any trouble with that, I understand it's confusing, but I just recommend going back to the first lab video where I talk about that, because if you don't have one, I have, this resource which talks about just connecting to it, but it also does talk about using it and saving and sending files, how common resolutions for that, or the most common methods. Again, I've always used email, but that's not necessarily the most easy. So some people just plug in a USB drive and that makes it easiest, or save to a cloud, Google Drive or Dropbox, whatever it may be. So they save to a cloud service so you can access it on multiple devices. So it's an extra step and it's super annoying, but yeah, if you're having trouble with some of that very general stuff like SPSS, you're just struggling opening SPSS, getting the information that you need in the software. So it's maybe you're having trouble following along with the assignment because you're first having trouble accessing SPSS. So totally understand that, but I recommend going back to this and just specify what specifically are you running into. If you're getting a certain error message, attach a screenshot to your email to me just so I can know what you're referring to, because saying you can't get into SPSS is just not really helpful to me to help you. I can't tell you what to do unless I know what exactly is going on. So the best thing to do for that is just send me a screenshot. Lots of students have done that and it doesn't bother me at all. It just helps me contextualize, okay, what are you working with? What is the problem? So yeah, just send me either a screenshot or just like a little bit of information about the error or issues you're running into, just so I have a starting point and know what questions to ask or know what advice to give. Because just I want to be able to help you guys, but you just have to give me some information so I know what specifically you're struggling with. You know, I upload these videos and have the assignment details, and I walk through everything step by step, but I know that doesn't always mean on your end it goes that smoothly. But you just have to tell me what part is the problem so we can start narrowing it down and I can give you some useful, guidance. And then if that is still like you're overwhelmed and you're having trouble articulating what the problem is, I just highly recommend you come to office hours, because then you can maybe share your screen and we can walk through something together, if that makes sense. So just wanted to give that little heads up. I'm happy to help. I always encourage you guys to reach out and come to office hours. But yeah, communication is key, and just helping me understand what you're specifically struggling with. I'm so happy to help. I understand, again, some of this stuff is like not straightforward, or just working in SPSS can be overwhelming and just not the most accessible because of using that virtual lab. It's just like there's extra steps you have to go through to get something saved or submitted. So I understand that, but just, be sure you're reaching out to me and give me some context, send me a screenshot, or give me a breakdown of like what you're running into so I know where I can jump in to help you and provide some guidance. But other than that, I think I've mentioned multiple times, but this will be due on October 4th, and I'm here if you need anything. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great week and good luck.